examination, that is, where is the maximum amount of temperature found? Is it at the equator or just north and south of the equator? So the answer is somewhat different. Why? Because of, as I said you, temperature is the intensity of a heat, that is the how much heat you can feel in a region. It is a bit different from insolation. Then one of the favorite questions of UPSC in the mains examination is, why does the temperature decrease with the increasing height? And corollary of that question, or we can say an applied part of that question, is why are the hill stations cooler during the summer months as compared to the plain areas? The third question relates to the difference between the temperature of seashore and the continents, that is, in the places which are near the marine or near the coastal regions and the interiors. The fourth is, why does the only upper portion of the lake freezes? In fact, below the lake, if the entire lake freezes, then how could the marine animals survive? You must be knowing that generally the frozen lake is considered to be dangerous because it breaks when there are some parts the lake does not freeze like the entire solid, only the top layer of the lake freezes, while down the water is still there, and thus the marine organisms can survive in the frozen lake. It is not generally the entire lake freezes, it is just the top layer of the lake which freezes. Now why this difference is there? It is because of the difference in the heating capacity of a land and water. And yes, then why this? Is it related to specific heat of water? Is it related to the specific heat required for land? Then the next concept is of albedo. So these are the different concepts which are related to the factors affecting temperature distribution. So we are going to do these concepts in detail, and here you will find many answers of the past year UPSC questions. So again, as I request you, see the lecture series, this lecture series in Superprof will be very helpful if you listen to this lecture series similar to the classroom. In the classroom, you are sitting in the classroom with the notes. There is a lot of you give lot of concentrate. You concentrate on what teacher is saying, and generally you do not have option to walk away from the classroom. If the classroom is of 2 hours, you have to sit there for 2 hours, and because you have to sit there for 2 hours or whatever the duration of the class, you generally try to focus. Use this same technique here, because this is what we are trying to replicate here. So use this as your personal classroom as per your convenience, but in your convenience does not mean that you switch off the lecture after 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Use the entire duration of the lecture. Take down the notes of what I am writing on the board, of what I am saying, as well as what I am drawing here, and supplement these notes as you do with the class in the classroom with your basic NCERT books. Basic NCERT books will suffice. See the attachments, it will take some time, but they will surely will be provided. But only thing is they are taking some time for proper development of the attachments. But you will get the attachments, but attachments will be in the form of a short summary. So it is the best thing is basic NCERT plus attachment plus your class notes. And here your class is on the device which you are watching. That is your class. So starting with the factors affecting the temperature. So one of the first factor which affects the distribution of the temperature is the latitudes. See, in the latitudes, as you are going away from the equator, the temperature goes on decreasing as you move away from the equator. So this is the belt which is having the highest temperature, the equator, and as you move away from the equator, you go to the polar region, least temperature and maximum temperature. Again here, the least temperature. So can we say that the temperature decreases as you go to the north or south of the latitudes? That is, the temperature decreases polewards. Temperature decreases polewards, or temperature decreases. The temperature decreases with increasing distance from the equator with increasing distance from the equator or temperature decreases as we move from low latitudes to high latitudes. Now, why the temperature decreases as we move from low latitudes to high latitudes? You already know the reason, because the amount of insolation goes on decreasing. So, as the amount of insolation, that is the amount of sun rays, equator are the regions which has overhead sun throughout the year. The tropics are the regions which have overhead sun at least twice in a year. That is, one when the sun is moving from north to the south, and the second when the sun is moving from south to the north. That is, we are talking of apparent movement of the sun. For any doubts, please refer your latitude, longitudes, revolution and rotation lecture in the prelims special section. Again, so the temperature decreases polewards, or we can say the temperature decreases with the increasing distance from the latitudes, or we can say the temperature decreases as we move from high latitudes to the low latitudes to the high latitudes. That is the maximum temperature in the lower latitudes, and the minimum temperature in the high latitudes. Obviously, this is what you can see. That is, more nearer you are to the equator, you will find the temperature being hot and humid. But here there is one difference, but the maximum temperature is not found at the equator. The maximum temperature is found just north of the equator or to the south of the equator. That is, exactly on the equator you won't find a maximum temperature. If this is the equatorial region, that is in the 5 degree north and 5 degree south, you won't find maximum temperature along the equator. Why? Because equatorial region, if this is the equatorial region is characterized by low pressure, and because there is a low pressure, there is high heat, no doubt, but because there is a low pressure, there is a formation of clouds, and because of the formation of clouds, there is a everyday rainfall in the equatorial regions. That is 5 degree north and 5 degree south. So the maximum temperature which should have been ideally at the equator is not found on the equator, because 27% of insolation is reflected by the clouds which come on the equator. Second, everyday rainfall reduces the temperature in that region. So the equatorial regions in fact do not record the highest temperature. Open your atlas and see where are the deserts located. Are they located in the equatorial regions? No, they are located just north of the equator. So the maximum temperature, obviously hot deserts of the world, they will be having maximum temperature. So the maximum temperature is found just to the north of the equator in the tropical belt. Why? Because the equatorial regions are clouded, and if you have already done that, the 27% of insolation is reflected by the clouds. So because of the reflection of insolation, the temperature is reduced, plus everyday rainfall also reduces the average temperature. So general rule is, as you go from equator towards the poles, the amount of temperature decreases, but maximum temperature is not found over the equator. It is found just to the north of the equator, because the equatorial regions being clouded, the insolation is reflected, and the equatorial regions experience rainfall every day. So what we can write here, but the maximum temperature is not found on the equator. but to north and south of the equator. To the north and south of the equator. In fact, the maximum temperature is found the maximum temperature is found 20 degree north of equator, because one, what is the reason? Major part of insolation or large amount of insolation is reflected by clouds in equatorial region, and second, equatorial regions experience rainfall every day. Known as 4 o'clock rainfall. Why the equatorial regions experience rainfall every day? Because of the, in previous lectures we did the convectional current. So the convectional currents are set up in which heats up the air rises upwards, forms clouds and gives rainfall. Now this is latitudes which control this is the control of latitudes. Now if I ask you, how does the latitude control, or why latitude is one of the major controller of temperature? Remember your previous lectures. Remember your basic chapter of latitude, longitudes. As you go away from the equator, the sun's rays become more and more oblique. When the vertical sun rays brings in more heat, and more heat then means more temperature. If the sun's rays start becoming oblique, the temperature goes on decreasing, and thus the equatorial regions do not experience that much. And therefore the regions away from the equator, the amount of sun's rays become more and more oblique, and therefore the amount of temperature decreases. This is what is the answer for how one of the latitude is not the reason for control of this. How does the latitude control the temperature? Now, if the question is where to find it? Now this is the reason, but you should obviously also know to interrelate. Somewhere in the previous lectures we have done that the equatorial regions receive vertical sun rays, while the regions which are to the north and south of the equator do not receive vertical sun rays. This is how you have to apply it. Now how to relate? Many people will say in the civil services one of the major reason for success is interrelation. That is, you should interrelate your knowledge. Interrelation of knowledge can only come with revision and thorough study. The more you revise, the more bridges or the more knowledge you can interact. If you study only once, and that too during examination without interest, just for clearing the examination, you will clear no doubt preliminary examination, but will find it difficult in the mains. Even in the preliminary examination, maybe the facts you can remember, but if something conceptual comes, then it will pose a problem. So more of interrelation is required. You should be able to play with your knowledge. That is, if this is one chunk of knowledge, this is other chunk of knowledge related, and that interrelation will come by more and more revision. More and more revision will come through more and more studies. So this is how interrelation is. Latitude is one of the major controlling factor. How come the latitude is one of the major controlling factor? Because the equatorial regions receive vertical sun rays, the other regions receive oblique sun rays, therefore the equatorial regions have the more heat. But the other factor, the equatorial regions have same boring type of a climate, everyday rainfall. Though we have not done the major climatic patterns of the world, that will come in the later part, but still equatorial regions means everyday rainfall, and as a result of this, these are the regions which receive everyday rainfall. So जो बारिश होगी तो temperature कम होगा, इसलिए equatorial regions, though they receive large amount of insolation, they do not record very high temperature because of everyday rainfall. Then which are the regions which do not receive everyday rainfall? India, does it receive everyday rainfall? No, we are dependent on rainfall during the monsoon season. So obviously average temperature will be present in the regions like India, that is in the subtropical and tropical belt just north of the equator. Even in the countries like India, even in these regions which are placed on the similar latitude of India, सबसे ज़्यादा temperature will be on the western side of the continents, that is which are the desert regions. So these are located in this, therefore the maximum temperature is located just to the north and south of the equator. Now why here north? I am telling you north and south here, but why I am saying north? In fact, of all the places in the globe, it is recorded maximum at 20 degree north. Why? Because the northern hemisphere is dominated by land. Land gets heated up much faster as compared to water, and therefore the southern hemisphere is dominated by water. If you remember your first class, Earth, I had drawn the entire map of the world, and you see the northern hemisphere dominated by land, southern hemisphere dominated by water, and therefore obviously in this also north and south में maximum सबसे ज़्यादा temperature will be at the north. Why? Because north hemisphere is dominated by land. Okay, so this is how interrelation works. Now here the factor was latitudes. The second factor which determines the temperature is the altitude. Now why altitude is one of the second factor which determines the distribution of a temperature. What is altitude? Height. You already know the normal lapse rate. What is normal lapse rate? As we go away from the surface of the earth, as we move away from the ground surface, as we are going up, the temperature will keep on decreasing at the rate of 6.5 degrees Celsius for every kilometer. This is what is known as normal lapse rate. So this is how altitude determines. Now this you should know why it happens. This should be your next question as a student for civil services. Okay, one fact but why? So the altitude. The second is altitude. The temperature decreases with increasing height. At the rate of 6.5 degrees Celsius per kilometer, known as normal lapse rate. Known as a normal lapse rate. Therefore, hill stations are cooler during the summer season. Therefore, as you go into the higher and higher and higher peak, the highest peaks are snow covered because the temperature goes on decreasing at the rate of 6.5 degrees Celsius, known as normal lapse rate. So this is the altitude. Now what you have to be concerned with, why does the temperature decrease with the increasing height, or why it is decreasing. So the second factor is altitude. Now why does the temperature decrease? Now here I am saying again interrelation. What are the facts you have studied till now in the previous lectures? You know that the atmosphere is getting heated. Why I was repeating it so many times? Because this is where the application part comes. You know that the atmosphere is getting heated because of ground radiation. You know that the atmosphere is getting heated because of the long wave radiation. So the atmosphere is getting heated not because of the insolation, but because of the long wave radiations which emit from the ground. The atmosphere is getting heated up. Second fact, you know that is the presence of water vapor. What we have done, 90% of water vapor is concentrated in the lower layers of the atmosphere. That is below 5 kilometers. That means as you rise up in the atmosphere, the amount of water vapor goes on decreasing. So maximum amount of water vapor below 5 kilometers. Third fact, you know, water vapor acts as a greenhouse gas. That means it traps the long wave radiations, obviously increasing the temperature. Fourth fact, atmosphere is more dense. Matlab there is a more presence of gases, more presence of dust particles, more presence of density of the atmosphere is high, denser in the lower layers. Why? Because of the pressure from above, the atmosphere is more denser. And that means there is a more of gas, more presence of water vapor in this region. As you are going up, the atmosphere is becoming rare, less dense. So the maximum presence of water vapor, maximum presence of atmosphere, the denser the atmosphere, there is more absorption of long wave radiations, and therefore the atmosphere is denser below. And as you are going up, as you are going up, you are moving away from the denser layers of the atmosphere. You are moving away from the source of the heat, which is not the sun for the atmosphere, it is the long wave radiations. And as you are moving up, the amount of water vapor goes on decreasing, and therefore the temperature decreases at this rate. Therefore, the hill stations are cooler during the summer season as compared to the ground surface. Therefore, you know, in the higher peaks of Himalayas, there is a presence of snowfall. Therefore, Mount Kilimanjaro, though it is located on the equator, there is a snow because of the height of the Mount Kilimanjaro. Mount Kilimanjaro is located at certain great height or any of the mountain, and therefore, higher the mountain, there is a maximum chance of it being covered by snow. The topmost peaks being covered by snow. Why? Because of the amount. Therefore, even near the equator, even in the southern part of India, even in the peninsular part of India, there is a presence of temperate forest. Kerala, Tamil Nadu, or whatever is below the Vindhyas, below the Tropic of Cancer is tropics. There should be tropical forest. But in the Western Ghats, after the height of 1500 meters, that after height there is a presence of forest known as Shola forest. In which region? The Nilgiris there of temperate forest known as the Shola forest of the Nilgiris. Why? Because of the presence because of the temperate forest. Matlab, here it is found in the temperate region. Coniferous forest is an example of a temperate forest. So in Kashmir, yes, temperate forest will be found, but even in the Kerala region, even in the Nilgiris, after the height of 1500 meters, there is a presence of temperate forest, because temperate forest, matlab temperature goes on decreasing. The forest or the trees which can survive in such low temperature is the temperate forest, and therefore we have this kind of an forest. So what are the reasons? The first reason is Just have a look at this understanding diagram. First reason is you are moving away from the source of the heat, that is you are moving away from the ground, long wave radiations. The ground is the major source of the heat. The second is as you are going up, the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere is becoming less, because 50% of the water vapor is concentrated in the lower atmosphere below the height of 5 kilometers. And the third reason is the amount of atmosphere goes on decreasing, and therefore the atmosphere is getting more and more rarefied, and there is increasing, and therefore the amount of heat or temperature goes on decreasing. Reason is the first reason is you are moving away from the which is the source of heat in the form of long wave terrestrial radiations. The second reason is the amount of water vapor is concentrated in lower atmosphere, water vapor, consider this as W is water vapor, acts as greenhouse gas, that is it traps long wave terrestrial radiation and increases the temperature. So as we are moving up, the amount of water vapor goes on decreasing, and therefore the temperature also goes on decreasing. The third reason is the density of the atmosphere is more denser in lower layers as we move up. The density decreases and therefore obviously the amount of gases is decreasing, because the density is decreasing, therefore the amount of water vapor is decreasing, the amount of gases including the amount of greenhouse gases is decreasing, and therefore as we move up, therefore denser the atmosphere, there is more water vapor, and dust particles, which trap the heat therefore the lower layer of the atmosphere is having more and more temperature than the upper layer. So this is the second reason, the altitude. Now if the question comes why What can be the question here? Question 1 can be, why the temperature decreases with increasing altitude? The second question can be, explain the phenomena of normal lapse rate. The third question can be, why hill stations are cooler? The fourth question can be, give reasons for presence of snow cover on high mountains. The fifth question can be, reasons for Shola forest or temperate forest in Nilgiris. Give the different reasons for this. So this can be the different questions for it. These are the different. The answer is the same. That is why the presence of this. Now the third factor which determines the temperature is distance from the coast. Distance from the coast. Now, how does this determine the temperature? Or what is the difference between the climate of Delhi and take any other metro, Mumbai or Chennai, that is or Kolkata, which are the coastal climates? See, in any of these three metros, that is Mumbai, Kolkata as well as Chennai, you won't find too much extremes of a temperature. What do you mean by too much extremes of a temperature? Means that the summers will be hot and humid, no doubt. Now with the changing climate change, the summers are becoming more and more extremes in the terms of temperature, but the hotness won't be the kind of hotness, or you won't get an heat stroke in Mumbai. But there are greater chances, and in fact people get the heat stroke in Delhi, in Lucknow, in Allahabad, in any of the areas which are very, very far away from the seashore, because the summers are extreme, 45 degrees Celsius. Haryana, Rajasthan, Punjab, around Hisar. Hisar is a place in India, in Haryana, where the temperatures go around 50 degrees Celsius. Never such things happens in Chennai or Mumbai. And during the winter season, exactly opposite Hisar or Amritsar, or you can say Chandigarh, they record 4 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius, 1 degree Celsius. Even Delhi has an extreme climate. Winters are too cold, summers are too hot. But Mumbai, what is the difference? temperature during the summer season obviously is air conditions nowadays, but during the summer seasons, if you if you stay in the greener parts of Mumbai, or if you stay not in the concrete jungle, during the summer season you'll increase the speed of a fan to 5, the maximum speed, and during the winter season you will decrease the speed to a minimum. That is, you won't switch off the fan, you won't wear a sweater in Mumbai, or you won't feel the heat stroke in Mumbai. The difference is because Mumbai is located on the coast while the other city is located away from the coast. So the coastal regions have an equable climate. You must have studied in the school, that is, the coastal regions are having equable climate, and because of the moderating influence of the sea, while the interiors or the continental parts, what do you mean by continental parts in geographical term, is the interiors, they have extreme climate. Why extreme climate? Because of the phenomena which I am going to show you on the board here now. Now suppose this is an Now suppose if this is the coastal city. If this is a coastal city. Now you remember one more phenomena, air, like water. How does water flow? From high altitude to low altitude, or does it go opposite way? From low altitude to high altitude. Obviously water moves under the influence of a gravity from high altitude to a lower altitude. Similarly, air also flows from high pressure to low pressure. Now you remember one concept here, air flows from high pressure to low pressure. When the air moves from high pressure to low pressure, what is then high pressure? High pressure means low temperature. When are especially for the people who live in the continental interiors or in the North India who are watching my lecture, when can you hear the speed of a far away train, even at midnight, even if you are not staying near the railway station, if you are staying far away from the railway station, still you can hear sometimes in the midnight a train going fast away, or the speed of a train or sound of a train. In winter season, when you can hear someone whispering to you more clearly, that is during the winter season. Why? Because in the winter season air is more denser, because the air is coming downwards, high pressure. In the summer season, on the other hand, low pressure, that because the air is going upwards. So you remember, pressure is inversely related to temperature. Pressure is inversely related to temperature. High temperature means low pressure, and low temperature means high pressure. High pressure. So these are the concepts you remember. Now come to the original diagram. During the daytime, what will be getting more heat? Is it land which is getting more hot, or is it water which is getting more hot? What will be getting more hot? Land or water? If you keep your vessel on a stove with water full, or with some amount of water, what gets hot first, water or a vessel? Vessel, not water. Why? Because that is the fourth point, that is the nature difference. Because you see, sun's rays can penetrate deep inside the water. It does not penetrate deep inside the land. Water is transparent, land is opaque. पानी के अंदर the sun rays can penetrate up to 200 meters. Here land maximum 3 feet. Second, the water is mobile, that is, in water, when the water gets heated up, it starts moving. गर्म पानी बाजू में हो जाता है, its place is taken by cold water. So water is mobile, land is not mobile, land is static. You won't see that the stones are getting heated up, they are rising upwards, then after heating up and moving at other places. Thankfully that does not happen, otherwise we would have been roaming with helmets on our head. But water is, you heat up water, your vessel, even after getting heated up, if you keep it for a long time, it will burn. But when you start heating a water, it starts boiling. Why boiling? Convectional currents are set up in. So the water molecules start moving. So that means during the daytime, this gets more heated up, resulting into formation of a low pressure. This gets more, this is less relatively cool, resulting into formation of an high pressure. And because of this, wind moves from high pressure to low pressure. During the daytime, there is a sea breeze or sea wind which blows from sea towards the land. And this brings a relatively calming effect, or it moderates the temperature, because the cool wind blows from sea towards the land. In the night time, if this is the night time, during the night time only, now see which will be more cooler, land or water? Specific heat of water is greater than that of a land. That means the amount of temperature required to raise the amount of, what do you mean by specific heat? It means the amount of heat, or the amount of heat, not temperature, amount of heat needed to raise the temperature of water by 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius is more as compared to that of a land. Land, only the upper portion is getting heated up, because sun rays cannot penetrate. So during the night time, the upper layer gets cooled very fast as compared to the water which is getting heated up to a considerable depth. So uska cooling also will require a time. That means water takes time to get heated up and to cool down, while the land heats up very fast. And similarly, during the night time, the land also gets cooled at a faster rate. So what happens during the night time? During the night time, there is an high pressure here, because the land is getting cooled at a faster rate, while there is an low pressure in this region. Why? Because the water is relatively warm, and therefore the wind blows from, this is a cold wind which blows from land towards the sea. So during the daytime we have sea breeze, while during the night time we have land breeze. So this happens every day in the coastal regions. Obviously, it cannot go too deep inside the interiors. It happens every day in the coastal region, and therefore there is a moderating effect in the coastal regions. On the other hand, in the interiors, the same kind of a moderating effect is absent, and therefore the interiors experience extremes of temperature. So what is the reason? You can see here, during the daytime, the sea temperature is high, and the sea temperature is low, and the land is relatively higher, because as we are going to do in the next point, therefore cool sea breeze blows from sea towards the land, because the air always moves from high pressure to low pressure, and pressure is inversely related to temperature. Similarly, during the night time, opposite happens, that is the land gets cooled at a faster rate, and because the pressure is inversely related to temperature, we have high pressure over the land, while the sea, which is relatively hotter, has a low pressure, therefore cool land breeze blows. This happens daily. Such daily blowing or daily rhythm from sea breeze to land breeze to sea breeze, this daily rhythm maintains the temperature in the coastal regions. So the coastal regions have moderating influence and have moderate kind of a temperature, while the interiors of the continents have an extremes of a temperature. So the factor is distance from the coast. The more distance from the coast, the more of an continentality. What do you mean by continentality? Is means more extremes of a temperature. So distance from the coast is the marine environment.
But we could not find, able to find any work to do. It is known as unemployment.
Marine environment moderates the temperature because of daily rhythm of land and sea breeze. Daily rhythm of land and sea breeze. Therefore, these regions have low daily range of temperature and moderate climate. Moderate climate. On the other hand, the continental interiors have extreme of temperature characterized by hot summers and cold severe winters. Because of absence of daily because of the moderating effect of the sea. So the continental interiors are characterized by extremes of temperature, by hot summers and cold winters because of the absence of an moderating effects of the sea. That they are characterized by such is known as an continentality. It is known as a continentality. So if the question comes in the examination, which of the following cities are having extremes of an temperature, and they give you 4 options: Kolkata, Mumbai, Chennai, Delhi. So which city will be having? Just see at your mind map. Delhi is located far interior, so Delhi is the answer. Or if Allahabad is the answer, Allahabad is given, Allahabad is the answer. Or if Bangalore and Mangalore, between Bangalore and Bangalore they ask you, Bangalore is the answer, because remember the cities which are there on the coastline. And how to remember is have a look at your atlas, or otherwise wait for the economic geography, because while doing economic geography we are going to do major cities also. Okay, so this is the third factor.